Hello, what is going on, guys? Hockey Guy 1 here. Welcome to my ranking of the 21 Pixar movies. So yes, I am updating this ranking because it has been a while since I've done it, and I do think it kind of needs to be updated since there have been like 4 releases since then, and I just thought it was a perfect time to update it. So let's get into the ranking. At number 21, I got Cars 2. This movie is just a disaster. I mean, the first one isn't really a good movie, but this one just doesn't make any sense as a continuation of the story. I mean, it continues with a spy movie, and it really just doesn't fit. It's how the first one was about racing, and this one was just a spy movie, and it just doesn't work because Maters as the main character just doesn't work either because he's just annoying and just not a good character at all. He just has barely any development, and even with the little development he has, it's not really convincing, especially with Lightning McQueen's development. He's still like the same character from the original. I mean, he's still cocky, he doesn't really have much development, and even with that, his sudden change about Mater was just completely forced, as it doesn't really make any sense. And as well as the Miles Axelrod plot twist was just ridiculous. And pretty much the only thing I like about this movie is the animation and the voice acting, and pretty much everything else about this movie it's pretty much a disaster. There's nothing really else to say about it. Coming at number 20, I got Cars 3. So this movie is also a really bad movie. I mean, it's just, it doesn't work. Lightning McQueen is still the same character as he is throughout the trilogy. He's just cocky throughout the movie. Yeah, and just all the sudden changes at the final race because reasons, and it doesn't leave him for a good character at all. And Cruz as a character just doesn't really make any sense. He's just kind of the trainer, but then all of a sudden she reveals that she wanted to race the entire time. And it's just a bit ridiculous and a really bad character development for him. And just couldn't have been any worse, honestly. As well as there's the main villain, Jackson Storm, is just really bad. Has something this movie really had a lack of is the villain, and the villain is just really bad. He's basically just Chick Hicks, a person who wants to be Lightning. And that's about it. That's his character. It's really bad character and unconvincing. And the story of this movie is just kind of a joke. I mean, it's just about how Lightning McQueen has to go on a race because he has to win it, and otherwise he has to retire. And it's just a really bad way to continue the franchise, and just the racing in this movie is just really underwhelming, and it's a really bad structure, and this pacing in this movie even is really bad, it is most of the time, and it just kind of tries to go back to a bunch of flashbacks of Doc Hudson, and it kind of makes this movie longer than it should have, and it's ridiculous. But if there's anything I'll give this movie, it does have great animation, but honestly, it's still a really bad movie. Coming in at number 19 is Cars, and like its sequels, as I said, it's a bad movie. I mean, there's no reason for this movie to have a whole trilogy, because this movie alone is just really bad. I mean, and Lightning McQueen is just the worst Pixar protagonist by far, because basically this is him throughout the movie. He's cocky at the beginning and cocky at the end, and he's a really bad character. No character arc given to him. It's really badly written. I mean, and his love story with Sally is just ridiculously forced and barely focused on. And it's just ridiculously forced. And then there's Mater as a side character who's just terrible in that role, and completely unfunny. And I guess Doc Hudson is a pretty good character, but he's like one of the only good characters that I actually somewhat liked in this movie. And I guess the animation was pretty impressive. Other than that, this movie's story is just not good, and then Chick Hicks is just a terrible villain who just basically just wants to be Lightning McQueen. That's basically his character. Then there's of course, as I mentioned, just pretty much, it's just Lightning McQueen's character is just the biggest problem with this movie. He's just a cocky race car throughout, and then all of a sudden his change just feels forced because there's nothing throughout the story that actually hints that he's going to change, and just randomly changes. It's just not good. It's just not a good character arc, and just really poorly done with how it is, as well as just the main storyline and just the plot throughout this movie is just really terrible, and just really bad pacing, and just not good because of how the story is just done. It's just Lightning McQueen wants to just win the race over them. It's not good at all. And honestly, that's about all I can say. It's just not a good movie at all. Coming in at number 18, I got Brave. Now, this movie isn't a bad movie necessarily. It's just a very mediocre movie. I mean, there are a lot of good things and bad things in this movie. Like the bad things, the plot is just kind of a mess, and just doesn't really have anything interesting until the third act, and doesn't really have anything to move it forward until the third act. But there are some good things about it, like there is Merida and her mother's relationship that is pretty well done, and just, but other than that, that's really the main great thing about it. And there's still the voice acting and the animation that's really impressive, but there are still a fair share of bad things about this movie, like there is the humor that's just pretty unfunny. And yeah, then there's three little brothers that are pretty bad, but yeah, that's why it's at number 18, why I really consider it a mediocre film. At number 17, I got Monsters University. So this movie is just a very mediocre film to me. I mean, once again, it just has a plot that doesn't really get interesting until the third act, and it's just really bland and predictable before then. And just the main storyline is kind of predictable. But there is some good things about it, like Mike Wazowski's character is just really well done. And it's a perfect character arc, and the opening just starts off really well. And then so his character is really done well. But honestly, there's still a fair share of bad things, like I mentioned. And it's just a very mediocre film. Coming in at number 16, I got The Good Dinosaur. So this movie is where we get into the good movies. It's not a perfect movie at all, but it's still a really good movie. And like Arlo is a very relatable main character, and really well done, and as well as those scenes with his father are really compelling. And sure, the plot is kind of similar to Lion King, but I still feel like it's pretty well done for what it is. And Spot is pretty good helping it out. And the movie's main villains, though, are not good. And then the most impressive thing about this movie is the animation. I mean, wow. I mean, the backgrounds just look really realistic, and then the character designs are just really well done. And as it does kind of look like dinosaurs to me, and the humans look really well, and it's very creative how they did this. And well, yeah, there's flaws with this movie. It's not perfect at all, but it's still overall a pretty good movie. At number 15, I got A Bug's Life. This movie is really good. It's a classic. It's a classic movie, but it's not. It's just pretty weak if you compare it to the other Pixar movies. It's above it. I mean, there's still Flick, which is really good main protagonist, and then there's Hopper, which is one of the best Pixar antagonists. But this movie is not perfect. There are definitely the problems with this. It's like I'm not the biggest fan fan of some of the comic reliefs in this movie, and some of the humor does feel forced. The only really humor that really hits me is the one that Heimlich gives. But those are my only problems with this movie. But other than that, this movie's just a classic, and just has really good looking animation and pretty creative and really good for its time. Even then, you got a really relatable main protagonist and a great antagonist, and yeah, and that's why it's not right here. So number 14, I have Up. Now this might be a bit controversial because I know a lot of people are probably going to put this much higher on their list, but to me, I find it is slightly overrated. I mean, it's still a really good movie, don't get me wrong. I mean, Carl is a really good protagonist, and the animation is impressive, as always, and then there is, as always, there's Russell as the kind of the character along with the main character, and I think he's really good as that. And there are some problems with this movie. Like, I'm not a fan of Charles Muntz. It's just not a very good twist at all. And then there's as well some completely changing of characters that doesn't really make any sense. And it's for the movie. It just feels a bit forced, but honestly, other than that, this movie is really great. It's like, it's really well made, and it's still can be considered a classic, honestly, at this point, as it is 10 years old now. At number 13, I got Ratatouille. Now, this movie is kind of underrated, as it's kind of feels like it's kind of a forgotten Pixar movie, as not really many people talk about it compared to the other ones. But it still has its flaws, don't get me wrong. Like, Chef Skinner's not really a good villain to this movie, and the plot can be pretty bland in some parts, or just in the movie. But other than that, this movie does have Remy. Remy was a really great protagonist for this movie. He was his development and wanting to be a cook. And there's Linguini as well, who wants to be a cook. And his love story with Colette is really well done, and for what it is. But yeah, and it's just a really great movie and I really like the looks of Paris in this movie. That's what stands out the most, and as well as the looks of the rodents just stand out a lot, as they are and look very well like rodents, and just it's really impressive me how they did that fur of them. Coming in at number 12, I got WALL-E. This movie is slightly overrated to me, but don't get me wrong, I still think it's a really good movie. Like there are a lot of good things to be said about this movie. There are just a few flaws that I have to say about it as well. Like, there are some parts in the second and third acts that just aren't very good and doesn't really make any sense in the plot. And then there's Otto, who's just not a good villain at all. There's not really much to him as a villain. He just doesn't really want to go back to Earth, and that's basically it. There's nothing really much else to him as a villain. And then there's still a lot of great things about this movie. Like, there's Wally and Eve's relationship that is really good, and their characters is just really well written, and the animation is impressive as always. And then the first act is just one of the best first acts that Pixar has done. It's really well done, and for how it is, don't get me wrong, and it's just really like these elements of the movie, and it has a really satisfying ending. So there is that to be said about the movie. Despite me thinking it's slightly overrated, it's still a really enjoyable movie that I could watch. Coming in at number 11 is Toy Story 3. While this is still a really great movie, Obviously, as you can see, it's the weakest in the Toy Story franchise to me. But don't get me wrong, there's still a lot to like about this movie. I mean, there's Lotso, who is a really intimidating and really well-written villain. And then one of the rare times I actually like a twist villain. And then Woody and Buzz and all the gang are just really well developed. I just didn't really like Barbie and Ken in this movie. I felt they were a bit underdeveloped. That's really my main problem with the movie. But don't get me wrong, this movie is still really great for how it's done, and just each character most of the characters are really well written, and just this does leave a very emotional impact with how they left Andy, and that's what makes it really great, and it just leaves a really big emotional impact and ends the Andy story off really well, which is why I still thought Toy Story 4 is necessary. Coming at number 10, I got Finding Dory, and wow, this definitely was a worthy sequel for Finding Nemo. Like it really does well at developing Dory's character and gives her a really good backstory with her parents. And then the new characters like Hank, Destiny, and Bailey, they're all really great characters and are really well done for what they are. Though I don't really like how this movie does sort of sideline Marlin and Nemo. They don't really have that big of a role in it. But I still find their characters to be pretty good despite that. As though there are some problems in the movie's plot, as it's not really perfect. But other than that, really, it's still a really great movie. Don't get me wrong, and it's a worthy sequel to this, as there is a lot of great things about this movie. As there is the animation that improved from the original, which was already great for its time. And there's as well pretty much all the characters that I mentioned already were great. And the story about Dory going to California and kind of finding her parents was kind of the main plot line. And then there's really great, and there's kind of a subplot that connects to that main plot of Marlin and Nemo trying to find Dory, which I think is really well done, and for what it is. Coming in at number 9, I got Monsters, Inc. This movie is just a timeless classic, honestly. I mean, it's really great for what it is. And the relationship between Sully and Mike, as well as Boo, is really well done. And though, once again, there is the plot twist villain that doesn't work for it, of Water News, that does not work. But other than that, the movie is great in every way. But as I mentioned already, Sully, Mike, and Boo's relationship is just really well written and very well done. And as well as Randall, if he was the main villain throughout this movie, it would have been probably would have been a masterpiece, because his character is just really well done and just really great for what it is. And then actually has really great villainous intentions, as he does have a really good rivalry with Sully, which makes his character really good. And then this movie is just really great, as you can tell, as well with the animation, how especially Sully's fur, you can tell it took a while to render that, and it was really impressive, especially for the time how they did that. Coming in at number 8, I got Coco. So this movie is just a great movie, and it's really well made. One of the only really good animated movies from 2017, honestly, because this movie is just really well written. I mean, I didn't really like the De La Cruz plot twist, as it was pretty predictable, honestly, especially after you met Hector. And Miguel is just a really well made protagonist, as his love for music really works. And just the Day of the Dead kind kind of setting just really works for this movie. Yeah, and as well as the animation and then in the City of the Day of the Dead thing, it looks really great. And then Hector is just really well in character, and that you can actually feel for, whereas he is the forgotten member in the family, but Morales still made really well. I really like how well he was written, and then overall this is still a really great movie. Coming in at number 7, I got Toy Story 2. Now this movie is just really great and is a classic, and a big part of my childhood. There's Woody who's really good in this movie, as he does develop really well with these new characters, Jesse and Bullseye, and as well as Buzz in this movie is really well done with how he's trying to find Woody as it kind of shows how he cares for him, and especially when he catches up and reveals the fake Buzz thing, and the animation is just really impressive, especially for its time. I mean, it still holds up to this day, is the thing. And as well as there is a lot of great things I like about this movie. Like, all the Zurg stuff was really good, and it's just really funny as this movie does have really good humor in it. And there is as well just one small problem, like there is the prospector plot twist, and just it does not really work for me. I mean they kind of give it away a lot during the second act, and it makes it kind of predictable, and just I do feel like villain plot twists are just overused in a lot of Disney and Pixar animated movies, and I kind of wish they'd die down on it a bit, as it just rarely ever works. But other than that, this movie is just a great movie, and it's a classic. Coming in at number 6, I got Finding Nemo. This movie is just another classic for Pixar, and it's kind of timeless. There's a lot of great things about it, like the whole journey throughout the ocean. I think it's really well done, and as well as Marlin and Dory's friendship is really well done, as well as Marlin as a father figure just really works, and Nemo really works. Even if he's just an overprotective father, it kind of seems like that, but he just really cares about his son is what really makes him a really well-written character, and develops really well throughout this movie. And there's Nemo as well, obviously, who's really great in this movie, as he's just pretty scared as he's kind of by himself, but he actually develops really well with the Tanking, and the Tanking are really good characters as well, as they work as they're in their roles. But honestly, I'm not really a fan of Darla. She is barely in the movie, and just is kind of the villain, but I wouldn't really consider her a villain. But she's just kind of a villain. But her as character is just not very good. I mean, there's not really much to it other than she just accidentally kills fish because she doesn't know any better. There's nothing really much else to her character, but honestly, everything else about this movie is just great, and just really great. It's such a classic film, which is why it's at number 6. At number 5, I got Toy Story 4. Wow, this movie is just a worthy conclusion to it, and just is really emotional, and it's a perfect ending to this franchise, and just really well written how it was. I mean, Woody's character was really well written, and then there's new characters like Forky, Duke Kaboom, Gabby, and Ducky and Bunny, who are all really great. For some of them are for different reasons. Like Duke Kaboom is really compelling, which is what makes him a great character. And then there's Forky, who just works really well as the favorite character kind of. And then there's Gabby, who's as well pretty compelling. And then there's Ducky and Bunny that just works very well as comic reliefs. And then the story of this movie is just really well done, and the plot is really well written, very eventful, and then then Woody and Bo Peep's relationship is just written very well, and and it just really leaves an emotional impact at the end when Woody does something, and it's just really sad, and it's a perfect conclusion to this movie. While I do have like one slight problem with Rex in this movie, felt underused, but other than that, this movie is just really great. Great with how it works, and I really just love this movie because of the emotional impact it leaves. Coming in at number 4, I got Incredibles 2. This movie was worth the 14-year wait. It was really well done, and how well written it was. I mean, it's just a perfect way to conclude. I mean, this focuses on Elastigirl more as the main character, which really works for this movie, as her character is really well done. And then there's still Violet, who's also really well written with Tony Reinger. And then there's Mr. Incredible, who's really well done with the father figure in this movie. And there's Dash, who isn't really done as much as the others, but still done really well. As well as Frozone has a bigger role in this movie, and I really like that. And as well as all these new characters like Void and Crusher and all those other characters are just really well written characters for what they are. But honestly, Screen Flavor as a villain isn't that bad, but honestly, the plot twist where it was revealed to be Evelyn Dever just did not work for this movie at all, and was pretty predictable from the beginning. But honestly, still a really great movie that was worth the 14-year wait. At number 3, I got the one that started it all, Toy Story. Wow, this movie is just a timeless classic that still holds up to this day, and is a complete masterpiece. I mean, and Woody and Buzz's relationship is really well done. You've Got a Friend in Me is a timeless song, and really well done in this movie. And just there's this, all the characters in this movie is really well done, like Slinky, Rex, Mr. Potato Head, Ham. They all have pretty big roles in this movie, and it's really well written from what they are. And just Sid as well is just a really great villain for this movie. Yes, he's just really intimidating, as he doesn't really know any better, as he's just kind of just torturing all the toys, which is what makes him a really great villain. And I really like that, and how he retrieves all of them as well is really well written. And this movie is just a timeless classic. There's nothing else to say about it. Coming at number 2, I got Inside Out. Now, I've always had trouble whether I liked this or Toy Story better, but honestly, I just like this slightly better than Toy Story because it's just a really emotional movie, and if you move from one house to another, it's really relatable, and just really well. It's a really good message to send to this movie's message is really well sent and just well executed. And then there's Joy, who's a really great character, and just you can really care about Riley. And there's Sadness as well, who's really good. Anger, who works perfectly, as he does throw out some pretty good jokes. And then there's Disgust as well, who can throw out some jokes, who's really good. And Fear as well, where then they obviously all control Riley, who's a really good character, as he does work as that kind of character who's moving and just is really sad, and then you can actually really feel for her as she's really haunted. And honestly, I just feel like this movie is a masterpiece, and just really, really great, and the animation just is really great as well, and it's just a complete masterpiece. And coming in at number 1, I got The Incredibles. This movie is just an absolute classic, and is a total masterpiece. Syndrome is the best Pixar villain for sure, and is very well written, and as you actually get all of his intentions as he's mad at Mr. Incredible because of how he rejected him earlier. And I really like how they do that in the opening scene. And Mr. Incredible being a main character works really well. And then Elastigirl as the mother figure in this movie works well. And then there's Violet, who's also really good. Yeah, as a teenager, as if you're a teenage girl, you can probably relate to him. And there's Dash, who actually feels like a little kid, which is really well done. And then the animation still holds up to this day and is just really gorgeous looking. And just all the action scenes still hold up even and just is really just a timeless classic and is a big part of my childhood and is just a masterpiece, which is why it's my favorite Pixar movie. So that was my ranking of the 21 Pixar movies. How would you rank the 21 Pixar movies? Tell me in the comments below, and I'd like to thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.